Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Shaggy Dad Teaches. So, one of the things that I've thought about for quite a while, and it's something that's been kind of like shoved down my kids' throats for a while, is how, uh, well, that's just your dad's opinion. It doesn't really matter. I came across, I searched for something, I think I searched for Dissent image, and I came across this blog post. So I don't know anything about this, but it looks like it was written in a year ago, June of 2021. And you know, I kind of usually truly hate psychologists and psychiatrists. I think they're sham artists for the most part. I think uh, very few of them actually solve problems. And like Peterson is probably one that does solve problems, but I don't think he is doing this one-on-one either, right? So anyways, let's get into this article. And it's my nightcap, and I should be in bed right now. So, and I'm wearing my hat because I like wearing my hat. This article from Cyblog, Groupthink. What is it, and how to avoid it? All right. Groupthink is a danger to effective decision making, and I took the decision making, and I've also put this up here too because I talked about this earlier today, and I've talked about it in other videos. Groupthink is a danger to effective decision making, but it can be challenged by encouraging dissent. Now, this encouraging dissent has been a theme of my channel for a very long time. It's probably the theme of my channel, to be honest with you. In government and corporate boardrooms, every day across the land, people gather in groups to make decisions. More often than we would like these decisions to turn out to be wrong, sometimes very badly wrong. More often than we would like, there should be a comma there, I think. These decisions turn out to be wrong, sometimes very badly wrong. Governments waste billions. Yeah. Corporations go bankrupt and people suffer. So why do groups sometimes make such awful decisions? Group decision making can go wrong in a number of predictable ways, but one of the most common is groupthink. And I think when I say a number of predictable ways and groupthink, I think groupthink is predictable, because people are predictable as well. There's very few inputs to figure out what a decision a person is going to make. This is me kind of ad-libbing right here. Some of the inputs is going to be like, what kind of family, environment were you raised in? Two parents, one parent only. Yeah. What city were you raised in? How old are you? What year were you born at? Because that will change, your first 15 years of life. Will really heavily influence how you make decisions. What are some of the things that you've done in your own life? Have you, made decisions? Have you explored the world? Have you tried different career options, or have you done the exact opposite and kind of shrunk away? So on and so forth. I think give me about 15 key indicators, and I could probably guess what decision you're going to make based on the input. Right? I give you a question, and I could probably guess your answer just based on that. And Facebook's figured this out. Google's figured this out. Many other places have figured this out as well. So this is nothing new. It's just an algorithm, and people are very simple. You just need to know a few inputs. Groupthink is a well-known psychological phenomenon, but less well-known are the techniques to fighting it. Understanding how groupthink occurs and what can be done to fight it is vital for effective decision-making in groups, and consequently vital for a well-run society and profitable businesses. If you go back in some of my videos, I talked about the 10th man. The 10th man was a concept brought up in World War Z, with Brad Pitt, when he was talking to the Mossad agent, where they said, like, if 9 people, if everybody comes across the same data and comes to the same conclusion, is the duty of the 10th person to go with the opposite flow of that, right? Because he in the movie they gave many examples how their groupthink screwed them over, right? And just that part of the movie. I mean, the whole movie in itself was I really liked it, but the part of the movie when Brad Pitt's character, I can't remember his name, went from Korea to Israel, and then there's just that Israel part, especially when he's talking that. I think that part was very, very interesting in context of today. Anyways, so it's a great movie. It's on. I still have Amazon Prime. So is it called Prime? Yeah. What is groupthink? Groupthink emerges because groups are often very similar in backgrounds and values, and this is how you can steer people. This is also how you social engineer people. You understand the backgrounds and values of people, where they're coming from, and you can social engineer them. Groups are also like, or at least have a healthy respect for each other. Because of this, when trying to make a decision, a consensus emerges, and any evidence to the contrary is automatically rejected and ridiculed even. So there's a couple of studies in the past, and I don't have those studies brought up because I am kind of ad-libbing this, that, say there's 2 participants and going into a study. One participant's an actor, and the other participant is just a participant. And the actor's already in the room, and then the actual participant goes in, and there's like just a chair. The other guy's sitting there. He's got his hands crossed, hands on the table, looking straight forward. And then the other guy comes in. The actual participant is like, "Hey, how's it going?" And then the other guy kind of looks back, he kind of blows him off and just looks straight forward. And then they'll ring a bell. And then that bell will ring, and then the actor, the first guy that was in there, will stand like at attention or whatever. And then the bell will ring again, and he'll sit down, clasp his hands, look forward. Right? And this will go on for a few different iterations, and finally, chances are the participant will go in there, the person that's, part of the participation will go in there, and he'll start replicating this, right? And then after he starts replicating that, they'll call out the actor. And then they'll bring in another participant unknowing of what's going on. And then now the first guy is just doing what he was told. There's no rhyme or reason behind it, right? There's just a learned behavior. And the military is much like this too. I had a long time to think about a lot of things we did in the military, and simple things like painting rocks. Painting rocks sounds ridiculous. And you ask, your senior NCOs nowadays, why are we painting rocks? And it's like, because that's what I said. But if you go back, when people started painting rocks or whatnot, there was a real reason for it. It was a thought out reason. It was just idle hands are the devil's playground or whatever it's called, right? But that knowledge of why something was happening was never passed on. It was just the what we do is passed on, right? And sometimes that works. When you kick in a door and prying off a room and going in and doing a breach, you don't. The why is kind of self-explanatory, but the things like painting rocks, right? It's just like, why the fuck are we painting rocks? Different thing altogether. So that the biggest thing here is like the reason for the decision has never been passed on, right? And a lot of these people will just follow the rules because they don't want to go against the grain. There's another study or something I saw to where I think it was in a mall. They just painted lines with arrows along the floor, and people would just follow the line with arrows. They'd go into a mall or whatever, and they'd follow this line with an arrow, and then they'd go into this big like arboretum in the mall, and they were pretty much walking in a big circle around this big room. And people, they were just looking down, following the line, and following the arrow. Nobody had to teach them or tell them anything. They just painted a line on, which tells you that a lot of people automatically are seeking for somebody to give them a decision. They're not there to make a decision, and they're certainly not going to think critically about the decisions made around them. They will follow a line painted on the ground with directional arrows. And it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's great for traffic. You know, you want to teach people the rules of the road so we don't have head-on collisions and shit. But to be honest, understanding that it's that easy to hack a person, that's why I think some of these videos are never going to go anywhere, because I don't think anybody really wants to understand how to think. Nobody really wants to understand to be a dissenter. I'm hoping there's one person, maybe two. That'd be great. They can make an impact somewhere. That'd be awesome. But ultimately, I know these videos are a lost cause. Anyways, because of this, when trying to make a decision, a consensus emerges, and any evidence to the contrary is automatically rejected and ridiculed even. We've already said that. And it's because they're already in that groupthink mindset. Individual members of the group don't want to rock the boat because it might damage personal relationships. And that's what I think I've talked about this in the past. We put way too much effort and way too much weight on what other people think about us and how we may be perceived. And at the same time, this is one of those things that if you were a dissenter, if you were somebody that rocked the boat all the time, people would get used to that part of you. But since if you come into a place and you were never the person that rocked the boat, you were never the dissenter, people are going to automatically assume that you're a shut up and color kind of person. You know, do what you're told. Agree with everybody else and make it simple. It doesn't matter if it makes sense. Now, if you came in and you're like, you were always the, opposition to something, I mean, sometimes that can be grinding. You know, it would be grinding for you if you felt like you had to be oppositional to every decision. Maybe you shouldn't be there. And it would be grating to everybody else, thinking, oh, great, here he's shooting, holes in the plan again. The groupthink pioneer psychologist was Irving Janis. He analyzed the decisions made by 3 U.S. presidents, Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon, to enter the war in Vietnam. Groupthink, he argued, explained why they had become locked in their course of actions, unable to explore alternatives. And that's a great thing. Vietnam, especially the very beginning, especially seeing how the French got their asses handed to them. And the only reason that we got involved is we had to fake an attack on a boat, the Tonkin Bay incident, whatever. We didn't have to get involved in Vietnam at all, other than we got tunnel vision after Korea, probably after World War II, like we have to kill all communists. Subsequent psychological research has backed up Janis's arguments. Experiments show people are quick to adopt the majority position, and crucially, they ignore all the potential alternatives and all the conflicting evidence. So this was a very, like World War Z, again. I think that one part of the movie was, I think that I liked the movie, period, but I think the one part of the movie is awesome when he was talking to the Mossad agent about how they got prepared for this, because there's an email that had zombie in it, right? And that's the 10th Man. Now, I did make a video probably 6 months to a year ago on the 10th Man. Go back and read that or listen to that and come up with your own conclusions. But that's one way you can fight this. Fighting groupthink with dissent. Fighting back against groupthink, Janus argued, is all about vigilant decision-making. What this means in practice is trying to make the group aware of the problems with the consensus and offer alternatives. To do this, someone in the group has to be critical, the 10th man. Encouraging critical thinking is not easy, but it is possible. First and foremost, the devil's advocate, and many of us are always the devil's advocate. It's easy punching holes in an idea just to make the idea stronger. Someone in the group, but not usually the leaders, assign the role of trying to spot holes in the decision-making process. This approach is tested by Hurt and Markman, 1995, who encouraged experimental participants to generate multiple solutions. The results show that these participants demonstrated a lower susceptibility to group bias. The power of authentic dissent. Unfortunately for the devil's advocate, they can easily be ignored because people don't take them seriously. Better than is someone who really believes in their criticisms. Nemeth found that when compared with a devil's advocate, authentic dissenters were more likely to provide a greater quantity and quality of effective solutions. And why that is because somebody's authentically thinking through the problems. You know, devil's advocate's probably being very superficial. Is like, well, we want to conduct this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem, and here's our solutions in one big package. And you're like, well, what about this thing? What about something simple like this? You know, what? It's kind of superficial. Whereas the deep thinking dissenter thinking about this is thinking of long term and seeing how things are actually laying down. And I was like, well, it sounds great. However, have we thought about these aspects? You know, we're not thinking about this from the political aspect, or we're not thinking about this from the international aspect, or whatever. All right, third, nurturing authentic dissent. Group leaders play a crucial role in encouraging or crushing dissent. Vinicure analyzed the decisions made by a panel investigating new medical technologies. The best outcomes were associated with a facilitative chairperson who encouraged participation from a group rather than one who is too directive. These techniques for eradicating groupthink then revolve around encouraging dissent. And this is one thing I want to say here is like dissent is a word that is used very negatively. It's like consequence. Consequence is one of those words that's used very negatively, but you know, the consequence of winning a game is you get a free ice cream, right? That's consequence can be a good thing. So, and dissent is the same way. Dissent is just saying, I don't agree with the majority of the way people are thinking because I have reasons. In the interest of making a good decision, someone has to be critical, otherwise mistakes are easily made. This may seem relatively obvious, but there are all sorts of reasons why dissent is never expressed. Organizations often recruit on the basis of who will fit in and not rock the boat. That's very much. They want seat warmers. But to be honest with you, you may want to fit in and not rock the boat. Well, at least fit in. That makes sense because even like my team, I think I fit in, and I'm a dissenter. I come up with, you know, but our whole team is that way too. So it makes sense. You know, we're just a bunch of assholes. Group cohesiveness is highly valued for productivity. Are you a team player? Are you going to shut up and color and just earn your paycheck? Groups who are always bickering are perceived as getting less work done. And it doesn't, I will say that groups that are always bickering lack leadership. Leadership, you don't have to be a team player or a dissenter. You can still have leadership that guides you, right? So I say groups that are always bickering just lack leadership in a direction. Disagreement and the expression of conflicting opinions make people uncomfortable, and they try to suppress it, partly because, and people don't like being disagreed with, or they don't want to be felt like people disagree with them. I don't know why, but as a hacker, this is one of the social engineering ticks that you can also exploit. Dissent, because dissent is easily misinterpreted as disrespect or even a personal attack. It's all framing, too. If you've always been a dissenter, people will frame what you say is dissent. And as long as you never personally attack somebody, well, then you can easily say, well, I'm not attacking you, I'm just attacking the idea. And also, dissenters are often labeled as troublemakers and targeted for either conversation to a consensus or outright expulsion from the group. And that is very true. That's how you keep, we see that in the politics and the news nowadays too, is like you get like these ultra left-wing people and these ultra right-wing people, and they shed everybody else. And Twitter's a great example of that. Twitter's like, well, the right, we wouldn't have to ban them if they just followed our ultra left rules, but they won't, so we have to ban them. Well, what they're doing is they're just labeling people basically as troublemakers and expelling them from the group. Lastly, dissenters are rare, and this is why I saw this and I was like, well, maybe this is a reason why you want to be dissenter, because you actually want to be one of those rare people out there, like an INTJ or something, right? People always want to be an INTJ. They don't want the responsibility of being an INTJ. No, fuck that. But they want to have that label because it's ultimately rare, really rare. Whatever. But dissenters are rare, and dissenters do rely on decision making. So, as a result, dissenters in groups are likely to be an endangered species. No, the dissenters with a voice are endangered species. To be effective, we need commas in this here, author, the psychologist Jeremy Dean. Commas. To be effective, dissenters must tread a fine line, avoiding pointless confrontation or personal attacks, instead of presenting minority viewpoints in an even-handed, well-modulated, authentic fashion. Yeah, I do agree with that. And you have to earn credibility, right? For their part, the majority has to fight its instincts to crush dissenters and to recognize the risk that they are taking of being critical of the majority opinion. Although the majority consensus may be right, it can be more secure in its decision if dissent is encouraged. And that, I believe, is 100% true as well. If, 9 people are thinking the same thing, it ultimately could be right. And chances are it probably is right, especially if people are used to this dissent idea. I'm trying to figure out where I'm at 23 minutes. And then next, I just click on decision making, 16 ways to improve your decision making skills. I'm not going to go over this tonight. I might just do another video on this because I want to ad-lib on that. But decision making is also one of those critical parts of just being a dissenter. You can't just don't just be an asshole and say, well, we want this. Well, I want something to be completely the opposite. I'm like, why? There should be a why for it, right? You should be thinking about this reasonably and critically. Anyways, that's my article for tonight. And the next story I'll go over is this 16 ways to improve your decision-making skills. Because I read this and I was like, no, I certainly don't disagree. Anyways, you have a great night, boys and girls, and I will talk to you next.